Hey guys, congratulations on making it through and surviving that crash course on JavaScript. I know if you're a beginner, that was probably maybe a little tough or long, but I promise you, you have came out a way better JavaScript developer. jQuery is going to be a breeze. And just so you know, I moved all our notes to a file called notes.js, emptied out our power.js file so we can put a real jQuery example there. Now, if you guys remember, way back when we were loading JavaScript, I referenced jQuery library at the bottom of the HTML document, which I haven't really explained yet why jQuery or JavaScript in general is loaded at the bottom, but I will later in the course, probably in the next lesson or two. And the other thing it references is that power.js file. So let's actually write our first jQuery code so we can see what it looks like. And our first test is going to be, let's just turn this first paragraph red. And I'm going to put an ID on the first paragraph. I'm going to call all this, please make me red, sir. Something totally stupid, does not matter at all. And I'm just going to write out this jQuery without telling you at all what I'm doing. And hopefully you get an idea anyways, just based on what we were previously doing. So I already wrote it out. That was super quick. And I want to put a comment block here that just says my first jQuery. So hopefully if my syntax is right, that ID matches up. If I refresh this page, it should turn red. It does. It worked. That's awesome. We have our first jQuery snippet. That's really all there is to jQuery 2. It doesn't really get much more complicated than the syntax you see here for a lot of things. But the goal with this course is not to let you just be able to write simple jQuery. I want you to understand it. I want you to understand this $sign, what the heck this is, what these are, and kind of how it works at a JavaScript level versus just being able to script jQuery. So let's kind of talk about that. And I think the best way to do this is we should just dissect the individual pieces here, walk through them, and you'll probably get a good feeling for what jQuery is doing. Now, this $sign is jQuery. jQuery is just a variable. So jQuery is pretty much this. I am jQuery. And I'll kind of go through that in a little bit more detail. And following that is a selector. So this is an argument for CSS selectors. It could be CSS3 or anything really to kind of select something on a page. So if you wanted to like form inputs, it could be input. If you wanted to select by the ID, like I did here, or class, you can do it that way. And then this third item is the helper function that jQuery has. And like I said, jQuery has a ton of these options for you. So there's the CSS one for manipulating styles. There's going to be other ones for and we'll go through them in more detail, like click events and hover events and pretty much anything you can think of, there's going to be a jQuery helper for. Now, you can see the CSS takes parameters so that it knows what to update. The CSS helper will turn red, and that is jQuery kind of dissected. So to recreate kind of what is going on here, let's actually do a good example. So jQuery will create our lame person's jQuery, and we're going to recreate jQuery in a sense that makes sense for how it's working and how it's getting pulled in. So jQuery we know is a variable for the $sign. And so it's like my jQuery code. And all jQuery is doing after it runs all its crazy JavaScript code for shorthand purposes, it's doing something like this, where var $sign is equal to jQuery. These are exactly the same, and it's just doing reassignment. So if you wanted to in your code do something like that instead, that would work. The $sign is just a shortcut they provide. Now, if we know from our notes how you can create an object and have a function be part of an object and how complex it kind of gets, that's what jQuery is doing here. So the selector, is actually an argument for the variable jQuery. So it's probably looks something like this. And this is essentially the jQuery library right here. It's a little more complex, but it's kind of neat to see it in action. So we're calling the $sign. And let's actually put this at the bottom because I want to rerun this and get it working with you all. So we're building our own jQuery where all it is a variable reassigned to the $sign for shorthand with passing a selector. So we pass the selector. Now, what about these CSS methods? Now, we know from the dot notation that that's how you retrieve the value from like an object. So we know that this jQuery is an object, which means since we're doing a function first, we need to be returning an object here. And that's probably tricky and confusing for beginners, but that's kind of what jQuery is doing. So we know that CSS is a method here. And that's how we're going to be able to call CSS. That's how jQuery is doing it. And so jQuery has all those different things like add class, toggle class, hover, click. That's kind of what jQuery is doing. It's just a JavaScript object that we're manipulating. Now, I'm not going to go through all those, but I do want to keep going on this CSS one. So we know CSS takes another argument, which is an object. So that's the same thing as if we would do var new CSS. And I can move this up here. And let me fix that spacing issues. And this is the exact same code from the beginning, except I'm declaring our styles ahead of time. And if we know that an argument is being received here for the CSS, we know this must also be a function that receives the style object. So style object or whatever you want to call it, or whatever jQuery calls it. And then this is where it does a bunch of crazy code to determine selector and styles. Bunch of crazy code to update the styles. And I'm going to paste here an example of what that could look like. jQuery is definitely going to be more advanced than that, but this is a good working example. So it's saying, hey, grab the document, and just like we were writing HTML to the document in the previous example, we're instead saying select with vanilla.js, the selector, which is the ID, and update the style, where I'm not doing any logic at all to handle for the key and the value. I'm just saying update it to red. And what we'll do, actually run this, and hopefully it works. So let's rename this to jQuery 2, and we'll do this as $2. And so if we call $2 new CSS, we took off, we comment all this out, it's back to normal. And if I would run $2, hopefully we make this red. It does, it works. We just recreated jQuery. That's kind of how jQuery works, but it's good to see all that working together, all that JavaScript that we were trying to learn and figure out being kind of condensed to this dead simple jQuery that jQuery provides for us. And that's what I'll do is I'll actually save this and put this in the notes for you so you can reference this later if you want to expand on this.